The obsidian walls of the conclave chamber shimmered with the suppressed light of 1,000 nebulae, each stellar cloud a captured memory from a distant sector, projected and held in static reverence. At its center, the grand elliptical table, crafted from a single, impossibly dense chunk of transdimensional void iron, reflected the somber faces of the Federated Ascendancy's High Council. Seated were the prime arbiters from the 7 founding species, their physiologies diverse, their expressions uniformly grave. The air, filtered and circulated with a 1,000-year cycle of precise atmospheric conditioning, felt heavy with an unspoken dread, a tangible pressure that settled upon the multifaceted sensory organs of the xylar, the crystalline membranes of the glick, and the neural tendrils of the ethereal pharon. All eyes, or their functional equivalents, were fixed on the central holographic projection, which pulsed with a soft, unsettling crimson. It depicted a vessel, ancient beyond comprehension, adrift in the desolate reaches of the uncharted veil. It was a relic, certainly, but one that had defied all established protocols of inert debris. The reports remained consistent. Prime Arbiter Vorlag, chirped Tikal, the diminutive yet formidable glick representative, its chitinous carapace vibrating with a barely contained tremor. The energy signature, faint though it is, emanates from the designated artifact within Sector 7 Gamma. Designation: Humanity's Cradle, as per the initial exploratory probes millennia ago. The designation was, of course, a jest at the time, given the primitive state of the species then discovered. A low, almost imperceptible thrum resonated through the chamber as Vorlag, a towering xylar with compound eyes that shifted through a spectrum of analytical greens and blues, extended a delicate limb toward the projection. His crystalline digits brushed against the holographic outline of the relic ship. A jest indeed, Tikal, and one that has now become less humorous. Vorlag's voice, a resonant hum that vibrated through the very bones of those present, carried an undercurrent of deep concern. Our initial surveys, conducted in the nascent cycles of our own interstellar expansion, categorized the pre-FTL species of the designated humanity's cradle as a minor threat, if even that. A terrestrial species, bipedal, carbon-based, highly emotional, and possessed of a rudimentary understanding of unified field theory. Their most advanced craft at the time was barely capable of atmospheric escape, let alone sustained void travel. This vessel, however, does not conform to any known human design schematics from that era, nor does it conform to any known design schematics from any known pre-FTL species. The Pharon Prime Arbiter, Alara, manifested a series of shimmering spectral forms within its designated seat, its voice a symphony of harmonic frequencies that spoke directly to the conceptual understanding of the others. The initial assessment categorized the vessel as derelict, a drifting hulk of an ancient, unknown civilization, perhaps even predating the Ascendancy's own nascent forays into the void. The subsequent energy fluctuations, however, challenged this entirely. A relic warship, as our long-range sensors have tentatively labeled it, does not simply wake up after eons of dormancy without some underlying, inexplicable mechanism. A guttural chuff emanated from the massive, multi-limbed K-Arthar representative, Xylos, its segmented plates clicking together in a display of impatience and suspicion. The data is contradictory, High Council. Our deep space probes observed this relic for cycles. It was inert, cold, a monument to some forgotten conflict. Then a pulse, faint at first, dismissed as residual thermal discharge. Then another, stronger. Now our probes report localized gravitational anomalies, minor yes, but consistent with power generation. Xylos' primary ocular cluster, a swirling vortex of deep crimson focused on the projected relic. The vessel itself is unlike anything we have ever encountered. Its aesthetic is brutal utilitarian, yet possesses an undeniable strength in its lines, like a predator sculpted from void iron, but its presumed origin from the humanity's cradle world is what truly disturbs the K-Arthar. Indeed, Vorlag agreed, his voice growing heavier. The original exploratory mission, designated Project First Light, reported on a species rife with internal conflict, primitive warfare, and a baffling capacity for both immense cruelty and inexplicable acts of communal compassion. They were, in essence, a paradox. Their scientific advancements were sporadic, their social structures chaotic. To suggest that they constructed a vessel of this magnitude, capable of interstellar travel, and armed with what our preliminary scans indicate are remarkably potent energy conduits, defies all established evolutionary and technological progress. Ession models. Tikal's voice regained a sliver of its usual confident cadence, though laced with fresh anxiety. The possibility that this vessel is not human in origin, but merely found by them, or perhaps even a deliberate deployment by an unknown, superior power into their sector, has been considered. However, the energy signatures, while unique, bear faint, almost subliminal similarities to the rudimentary energy patterns observed in human electrical and thermal technologies from their pre-FTL era. A troubling resonance, prime arbiters. The council chamber fell into a profound silence, broken only by the ambient hum of the life support systems and the distant, synthesized chirping of a data processor. The projected image of the relic warship remained, a silent, menacing sentinel in the holographic void. Its form was angular, blocky, yet possessed a strange, almost organic grace in its sheer mass. It was not elegant in the way ascendancy vessels were, with their flowing, bio-integrated forms, but rather like a hammer, designed for a singular, brutal purpose. Vorlag broke the quiet, his voice a low, gravelly hum. Our greatest concern lies not just with the vessel itself, but with the implications of its awakening. If it is human, it represents a technological leap so profound, so utterly inexplicable, that it necessitates a complete reevaluation of all our understandings of emergent species. If it is not human and instead represents a proxy or a hidden benefactor, then we face an even greater, unknown threat. What species would bestow such a weapon upon a pre-FTL civilization, and why? The very thought destabilizes centuries of geopolitical doctrine. Xylos, ever pragmatic, leaned forward, its multi-jointed limbs clicking. And what of the laughing, as the initial reports so crudely put it? Our scout probes detected a cascade of energy signatures from the nearby Zalosian patrol fleet. The initial contact, after the vessel's full activation, was one of amusement. Their comms, intercepted and translated, indicated derision. They perceived it as an ancient, clanking contraption, a relic, an anomaly to be contained and perhaps studied for its historical oddity, nothing more. Alara's spectral form shimmered with a ripple of unease. The Zalosian fleet commander, Praetor Carven, communicated his intent to deploy a standard containment field and initiate salvage protocols. His final transmission, before the inexplicable silence, was a boast regarding the ease with which this relic would be rendered inert. A boast that was, regrettably, never concluded. A heavier silence descended. Silence, Vorlag's voice was barely a whisper, yet it resonated with an unnatural force. Explain the nature of this silence, Alara. The Zalosian fleet, prime arbiter, Alara projected, its harmonic frequencies tinged with a dissonant chord, comprised of a core of ascendancy standard heavy cruisers and supporting frigates, numbering a substantial force. After the final transmission from Praetor Carven, all communications ceased. All sensor returns ceased. The fleet, by all indications, simply vanished. Vanished without a single distress call, without a single energy flare, without even the residual radiation expected from a violent kinetic engagement. The projection of the relic warship flared, its crimson glow deepening. An overlay appeared, showing a section of void where the Zalosian fleet had been. It was now empty, utterly, unnervingly empty. Impossible, Tikal hissed, its voice barely audible. A standard ascendancy fleet does not simply vanish, not without a trace, not against a single ancient vessel, even if it has inexplicably powered on. The energy expenditure required to achieve such an effect, it is beyond our current understanding. Even the most advanced ascendancy antimatter weaponry leaves behind a measurable signature. The Zalosian fleet was simply erased. Vorlag's compound eyes narrowed, the green hues deepening to an almost blackish emerald. This is no mere reawakening of an ancient craft, High Council. This is an event of unprecedented scale, an unknown factor acting with unknown intentions from an unknown source. And the connection to the humanity's cradle, world, it cannot be ignored. We must assume, for now, that this relic, this warship, is intrinsically linked to the species we once dismissed as primitive, chaotic, and ultimately inconsequential. The very species we laughed at. The final words hung in the air, a chilling indictment of past arrogance. The Council knew, with a certainty that reached into the primal fears of their ancient species, that they had made a grave, perhaps catastrophic, miscalculation. The galaxy, it seemed, was about to reveal a secret far more profound and terrifying than any they had ever encountered. And the humans, those baffling, contradictory beings, were at its heart. The decision to establish a secure perimeter around Sector 7 Gamma, Encompassy, The entire humanity's cradle system and its immediate stellar neighbors, was enacted with a grim, unanimous vote. Prime Arbiter Vorlag personally oversaw the deployment of the Ascendancy's most advanced stealth sensor arrays, ensuring that not even a stray photon could escape or enter the zone without immediate detection. The silence from within the perimeter was absolute, broken only by the faint, continuous energy signature emanating from the relic warship. It remained stationary, a dark, angular silhouette against the distant, swirling nebulae, a monument to an unknown power. The Zalosian fleet was gone, utterly and irrevocably. This fact, more than any other, fueled the terror in the hearts of the High Council. For cycles, the Ascendancy had operated under the assumption of technological supremacy, an unspoken understanding that their advanced biointegrated starships, their mastery of subspace manipulation, and their ancient wisdom placed them at the zenith of galactic power. Now, that assumption felt like a fragile shell, cracked and threatened by an unseen force. The philosophical implications were profound. Had their long reign blinded them? Had they dismissed, through sheer hubris, a nascent civilization that harbored capabilities far beyond their comprehension? The Ascendancy's deep space probes, meticulously designed to operate silently and invisibly within the uncharted veil, began to transmit increasingly detailed, yet no less perplexing, data regarding the relic. Its hull, initially assessed as a rudimentary composite alloy, now registered as an unknown metamaterial, capable of absorbing and dispersing energy with an efficiency that defied known physics. Its internal structure, once thought to be a chaotic tangle of ancient circuitry, now presented as a highly integrated, self-repairing network, humming with a low-level, barely perceptible resonance. It was, in essence, a living machine, ancient yet vibrant. One of the High Council's chief scientific advisors, a multi-limbed, perpetually analytical Katar named Siller, presented his findings to the Silent Council. His voice, usually a dry, academic drone, now carried a distinct tremor. Prime Arbiters, the energy signature from the vessel which we have now tentatively designated the anomaly, has stabilized. It is not generating power in the conventional sense, through fusion or antimatter. Rather, it appears to be drawing energy directly from the fabric of spacetime itself, a form of zero-point extraction far more advanced than our theoretical models. Furthermore, its internal systems are operating at what appears to be a minimal idle state. It is not actively engaged in any offensive or defensive postures. It is simply observing. Xylos, the K-Arthar, scoffed, a deep rumbling sound. Observing, after it annihilated an entire fleet with such efficiency that not even dust motes remain. What kind of observation leads to such absolute destruction, Siller? Siller's lower manipulators twitched nervously. The data suggests the Zalosian fleet initiated aggressive maneuvers. Their communications indicated a clear intent to disable and board. It is possible, Prime Arbiter, that the anomaly simply reacted defensively, and its defensive capabilities by all quantifiable metrics are beyond anything we have ever conceived. Alara's spectral form pulsed with a sudden, intense blue light. The question remains, who is operating this vessel? If it is human, then we have grievously underestimated them. If it is not, then we face a potential third party of unimaginable power, one that has chosen to intervene in the evolution of a species previously deemed inconsequential. Vorlag's gaze swept across the holographic projection of the silent, waiting warship. We dispatched the Ascendancy's primary diplomatic corps under the guise of an exploratory mission to the uncharted veil, into the human system. Their mission, to make contact with the human civilization on their homeworld designated Earth, to ascertain their current technological level, their social structures, their intentions. To understand if they know of this relic, or if it is as much a mystery to them as it is to us. The diplomatic mission, a sleek, unarmed Ascendancy vessel shimmering with advanced cloaking technology, arrived in the human system undetected. It positioned itself in a geosynchronous orbit above Earth, meticulously observing the planetary activity. The initial reports were, once again, perplexing. The humans had indeed progressed, but not in the way the High Council had feared. They possessed rudimentary FTL technology, barely capable of reaching their immediate stellar neighbors. Their planetary defense grids were primitive by Ascendancy standards, their orbital fleets a hodgepodge of disparate designs, reflecting their continued internal divisions. They were still, in essence, a young, developing species, grappling with the complexities of unification and the nascent challenges of interstellar travel. They are nowhere near capable of constructing the anomaly, TCAL concluded, after reviewing the comprehensive reports from the diplomatic mission. Their most advanced designs are crude by comparison. Their energy signatures are still largely based on conventional fusion. There is no resonance, no echo of the technologies we observe within the relic warship. This deepens the mystery rather than resolving it. It suggests a complete disjunction, Vorlag mused, his voice a low thrum. Either a profound, hidden human faction exists, operating outside the visible societal structures, or the anomaly is indeed entirely alien, a misplaced artifact that has found its way into their sphere of influence. Then came the unexpected. From the surface of Earth, a faint, rhythmic pulse of energy began to emanate, directed precisely at the relic warship in the distant uncharted veil. It was not a weapon signature, nor a communications burst in any known ascendancy frequency. It was a complex, multi-layered signal, almost musical in its structure, composed of mathematical sequences, prime numbers, and abstract artistic representations. "They are trying to communicate," Siller gasped, his analytical processes struggling to categorize the bizarre signal. "But not with us, with it. They are attempting to awaken it or perhaps to understand it." This revelation sent a fresh wave of consternation through the conclave chamber. The humans, despite their apparent technological limitations, possessed a fundamental curiosity, an audacious willingness to engage with the unknown, even when confronted with a power that had annihilated an entire fleet. This was the paradox of humanity, primitive yet brave to the point of seeming suicidal, fragmented yet capable of profound, species-wide initiatives. Vorlag ordered the Ascendancy diplomatic vessel to break cloaking and initiate direct contact with the human homeworld. The decision was fraught with peril. They were revealing themselves to a species they barely understood, a species potentially connected to an existential threat. But the alternative, remaining ignorant while humanity potentially awakened an unstoppable force, was even less palatable. The first direct communication from the Ascendancy vessel to Earth was broadcast on all known human frequencies, a multilingual, multi-species overture of peace and inquiry. The response was immediate and unexpectedly calm. "An orbital station identified as Terra Command," responded. The voice, translated through universal protocols, was human. It was a female voice, steady, resonant, and devoid of any overt aggression or fear. "This is Terra Command to unknown vessel. We detect your presence. State your intentions." The Ascendancy diplomat, Ambassador Xyler 7, a nuanced practitioner of interspecies relations, initiated the dialogue. "This is Ambassador Xyler 7 of the Federated Ascendancy. We come in peace. We detected an anomalous energy signature emanating from the designated Humanities Cradle sector and sought to ascertain its nature. We have also observed your communications with a derelict vessel in the uncharted veil. We seek understanding." A pause, then the human voice, surprisingly candid. "We are aware of the vessel. We have designated it the Harbinger. It appeared in our system over 1,000 years ago, seemingly inert, a ghost from a time we cannot comprehend. It possesses technologies far beyond our current capabilities. We have been attempting to understand it, to communicate with it for centuries." This revelation stunned the High Council. 1,000 years. The vessel had been dormant for so long, and the humans had been aware of it, studying it, communicating with it all this time. It contradicted all their initial assumptions of a sudden, inexplicable awakening. "You have been aware of the anomaly for a millennium," Vorlag's hum resonated with disbelief. "And you have made no attempt to salvage its technology, to weaponize it, to exploit its power." The human response was swift, almost a rebuke. "We are a species of many factions, Ambassador, but even in our darkest periods, the consensus regarding the Harbinger has been one of reverence, of study, of cautious inquiry. It is clearly a construct of immense power, but also immense purpose. We do not understand its purpose, but we understand the potential consequences of misusing such a power. We have chosen to learn, not to conquer." This ethical stance, coming from a species previously classified as chaotic and conflict-ridden, was a profound shock to the Ascendancy Council. It defied their projections, their historical data. It was an unexpected, almost bewildering display of restraint. Then the human voice offered a further revelation. "Your probes, Ambassador, have been detected. Your initial attempts to contain the Harbinger were noted. The Zalosian fleet, as you call it, initiated aggressive energy discharges and attempted a forceful boarding. The Harbinger reacted defensively, as any entity might when threatened. A collective gasp, or its equivalent, swept through the conclave chamber. They had been observed. Their arrogance, their attempts at containment, their misplaced aggression, all had been witnessed, not just by the relic, but by humanity itself. And humanity, despite their perceived vulnerability, did not sound fearful or angry. They sounded disappointed. "We understand your caution, Ambassador," the human voice continued, devoid of accusation. "But we implore you to understand ours. The Harbinger is not a weapon to be wielded. It is a mystery to be understood. We believe it holds secrets to a civilization far beyond our imagining, and we believe it chose our system for a reason." Vorlag's compound eyes shifted, processing the information with an intensity that radiated palpable heat. This was not the chaotic, primitive species they had catalogued. This was a species that, despite its internal divisions, possessed an underlying unity of purpose, a capacity for long-term strategic thinking, and a moral compass that, while perhaps not perfectly aligned with the ascendancies, was undeniably present and strong. They had laughed at a relic warship, an ancient alien leviathan. But they had also laughed at the species that now spoke with such calm authority, a species that had observed them, understood their errors, and possessed an ethical framework that resonated with a depth the ascendancy had mistakenly believed was their sole dominion. The humans were not only connected to the relic, they were its quiet custodians, its patient interpreters, and their wisdom, it seemed, was far more ancient than their apparent technology. The Ascendancy High Council, once so certain of their galactic preeminence, now found themselves in a position of profound intellectual and philosophical humility. The revelation that humanity had been observing the Harbinger for a millennium, patiently deciphering its inert presence, and resisting the urge to exploit its immense power, was a paradigm shift of monumental proportions. It shattered their preconceived notions of species evolution, technological advancement, and ethical development. Prime Arbiter Vorlag initiated a direct, secure channel with Ambassador Xyler 7 on the Ascendancy vessel orbiting Earth. "Xyler 7, convey our deepest regrets for the loss of the Zalosian fleet. We were operating under a misapprehension of the situation, an error born of insufficient data, and perhaps undue haste. Request full diplomatic access to Earth. We wish to engage in direct, face-to-face dialogue with humanity's leadership." The response from Terra Command was swift and surprisingly accommodating. "Access granted, Prime Arbiter. We welcome direct dialogue. A secure landing zone has been prepared. Our leadership awaits." The landing of the Ascendancy diplomatic craft on Earth was a meticulously choreographed event, designed by human planners to convey both welcome and quiet strength. The vessel descended into a vast, verdant valley, surrounded by towering, spire-like cities that gleamed with soft, bioluminescent light. The architecture was organic, flowing, blending seamlessly with the natural landscape. A stark contrast to the utilitarian, monolithic structures the Ascendancy expected from a species of humanity's supposed technological level. Upon disembarking, Ambassador Xyler 7 and his retinue were met not by armed guards or militaristic displays, but by a small delegation of humans, clad in simple, elegant robes that shimmered with integrated light patterns. At their head stood the human who had spoken to them previously, identified as Chancellor Aris. Her presence was calm, her gaze direct and unwavering. There was no fear, no subservience, only a quiet, resolute dignity. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Xyler 7, Chancellor Aris's voice was warm yet firm. "We are grateful you have chosen to engage us directly." Ambassador Xyler 7, a master of diplomatic protocol, inclined his multifaceted head in a gesture of profound respect. "Chancellor Aris, the Federated Ascendancy extends its deepest apologies for our initial approach to the Harbinger and our subsequent aggressive actions. We acknowledge our profound error in judgment. We seek to learn from you, to understand the true nature of this remarkable vessel and your species' unique connection to it." The meeting took place in a circular chamber, its walls transparent, offering breathtaking views of Earth's vibrant biosphere. The atmosphere was one of palpable tension, but also of intense, mutual curiosity. Chancellor Aris spoke with a clarity and philosophical depth that surprised the Ascendancy delegation. "For centuries, the Harbinger has been a focal point of human unity," she began, her voice resonating with quiet power. "Its very presence, a mystery too vast to ignore, compelled us to look beyond our Arnal conflicts. It taught us patience, demanded our intellectual rigor, and most importantly, forced us to confront our capacity for both destruction and creation. We understood early in our attempts to understand it that its power was immense, potentially catastrophic if unleashed without comprehension. She gestured to a holographic projection that appeared in the center of the chamber. It depicted the Harbinger in exquisite detail, but with an overlay of intricate, shimmering lines, like pathways of light illuminating its internal structure. Our scientists, over generations, have painstakingly deciphered fragments of its operational matrix. It is not merely a warship ambassador. It is a vessel designed for profound interstellar exploration, capable of traversing vast cosmic distances, powered by principles we are only now beginning to grasp. One of Xyler 7's scientific advisors, a Katar named Velen, whose analytical processes were constantly whirring, interrupted, his voice edged with urgency. But its defensive capabilities, the erasure of the Zalosian fleet, that suggests an armament of unimaginable power. You spoke of it reacting defensively. What was its defensive mechanism? Chancellor Aris regarded Velen with a calm, almost sympathetic expression. Its primary defensive mechanism is not a weapon in the conventional sense. It creates localized, temporary spacetime dislocations. When the Zalosian fleet initiated its energy discharges, the Harbinger responded by momentarily shunting the entire fleet, every vessel, every crew member, into a localized, infinitesimally small pocket of non-existence, then collapsing that pocket. It's not destruction, Velen, it's displacement. A stunned silence descended upon the Ascendancy delegation. Displacement, not annihilation, but a temporary removal from the fabric of reality. This was not merely advanced weaponry, it was a manipulation of fundamental cosmic laws. And its energy source? Xyler 7 managed to articulate, his internal physiological processes struggling to keep pace with the revelations. The zero-point extraction, you understand this. Chancellor Aris nodded. We are beginning to. It taps into the inherent quantum fluctuations of the void, drawing minute amounts of energy from every point in spacetime. It is a process of incredible subtlety and efficiency. We believe its designers understood the fundamental interconnectedness of the universe and how to harness it without violating its delicate balance. The conversation continued for hours, delving into the intricacies of the Harbinger's systems, human society, and the philosophical implications of their shared experience. The humans spoke of their struggles, their triumphs, their unique capacity for both profound empathy and terrifying aggression, a duality they had learned to manage through the silent, watchful presence of the ancient vessel. The Harbinger had become a mirror, reflecting their own potential, both light and shadow. As the discussions progressed, a crucial piece of information emerged. The humans had not merely observed the Harbinger. They had been attempting to replicate certain aspects of its technology, not for warfare, but for exploration and sustainable energy. Their cities, with their integrated bioluminescence and flowing, self-repairing architecture, were a direct result of their attempts to understand and apply the principles they had gleaned from the alien relic. Their FTL drive, while primitive by Ascendancy standards, incorporated subtle elements of the Harbinger's spacetime manipulation, allowing for remarkably efficient, if limited, interstellar jumps. You have been studying this vessel for a millennium, Vorlag mused, his voice filtering through Xyler 7 comm unit from the orbiting Ascendancy vessel, broadcast to the council chamber. And in that time you have not only refrained from weaponizing its power, but you have integrated its principles into a harmonious, sustainable civilization. This is extraordinary, Chancellor, truly extraordinary. Chancellor Aris's gaze settled on Xyler 7, a flicker of something ancient in her eyes. We learned from its silence, Prime Arbiter. We learned that true power lies not in destruction, but in understanding. We learned that the universe is vast and full of mysteries, and our place within it is one of discovery, not domination. The Harbinger taught us humility. The climax of the discussions came when Chancellor Aris extended an invitation. We believe it is time, Ambassador, for a joint effort. We have made significant progress in deciphering the Harbinger's primary command matrix. We believe, together, we can awaken it fully not as a weapon, but as a vessel of interspecies cooperation, a tool for shared exploration. This proposal, audacious in its scope, sent ripples of debate through the Ascendancy High Council back in the conclave chamber. To fully awaken the entity that had vaporized a fleet. To potentially unlock its true power was a gamble of galactic proportions. But the alternative, to remain ignorant, isolated, and fearful, seemed far less palatable after witnessing humanity's quiet wisdom. Vorlag, after a moment of profound internal reflection, made a decision that would reshape the Ascendancy's future. Chancellor Aris, the Federated Ascendancy accepts your invitation. We will commit our finest scientific minds, our most advanced analytical tools, and our most seasoned explorers to this joint venture. We will learn from humanity. We will embark on this journey together. A subtle shift, almost imperceptible, occurred in Chancellor Aris's expression, a glimmer of satisfaction, of hope. "The Harbinger," she said, her voice imbued with a newfound anticipation, "has waited long enough. Perhaps its true purpose is about to be revealed." The Ascendancy, who had once laughed at a relic warship and the primitive species near it, were now standing on the precipice of a new future, guided by the very beings they had underestimated. The silence of the ancient vessel had spoken volumes, and humanity, it seemed, had been listening for a very long time. The era of their undisputed dominance was over. The era of shared discovery, however, had just begun. The joint effort to awaken the Harbinger became the singular focus of both Ascendancy and human scientific communities. A vast, collaborative research station, a marvel of bio-integrated Ascendancy technology and human-derived material science, was constructed in orbit around the ancient vessel. Teams of Xyler, Glick, Farron, K. Arthar, and human scientists worked in harmonious synchronicity, their diverse methodologies converging on a common goal. The Ascendancy's advanced sensor arrays, once used for surveillance and potential containment, were now repurposed to interface directly with the Harbinger's enigmatic systems. Chancellor Aris and Prime Arbiter Vorlag frequently observed the process from a secure observation lounge within the research station, their conversations now marked by a mutual respect that transcended their species' vast differences. "Your species' capacity for long-term strategic patience is truly remarkable, Chancellor," Vorlag hummed, his compound eyes fixed on the shimmering diagnostic readouts flowing across the panoramic screen. "To observe such a potential force for a millennium, to study without exploitation, it speaks to a level of collective restraint that is rare, even among our most ancient civilizations." Aris smiled faintly. "It was not always so, Prime Arbiter. Our history is rife with examples of short-sightedness, of fear driving destructive impulses. But the Harbinger's presence, its silent challenge, forced us to evolve. We understood that if we were to ever truly comprehend it, we needed to become worthy of its secrets, worthy of its power." The Qatar scientist, Siller, who had initially presented the bewildering data of the Zalosian fleet's disappearance, now worked side by side with Dr. Kenji Tanaka, a human xenolinguist specializing in complex mathematical languages. Their combined efforts, augmented by Ascendancy conceptual translators, began to unravel the dense informational layers embedded within the Harbinger's core matrix. "We've identified a pattern, Prime Arbiter," Siller chirped excitedly, his multi-limbed frame almost vibrating with intellectual fervor. "A resonant frequency deep within its central processing unit. It appears to be a dormant activation sequence, a kind of master key." Tanaka, his human features illuminated by the holographic data, added, "It's not a simple switch, Chancellor. It's a multi-layered authentication protocol. It requires specific environmental and cognitive inputs. It's almost as if the original designers intended for it to be activated only by a species that demonstrated a certain level of readiness." The concept of readiness resonated deeply with both the humans and the Ascendancy. It implied a moral and intellectual maturity, a deliberate filter against misuse. Weeks blurred into months. The collective efforts revealed more about the Harbinger than either species could have imagined. Its construction was not merely a vessel. It was an intricate, self-sustaining ecosystem capable of supporting life for untold millennia. Its primary drive system, far from being a weapon, was a sophisticated warp field generator that could fold spacetime to an extent that rendered conventional FTL obsolete, allowing for truly instantaneous jumps across galactic distances. Its defensive capabilities, the spacetime dislocations, were merely a localized application of its warp field technology, a gentle, non-destructive means of removing threats rather than annihilating them. Finally, the moment arrived. The activation sequence was understood. It required a unique combination of energy signatures, specific thought patterns, and a consensual declaration of NT. NT from multiple species. Chancellor Aris and Prime Arbiter Vorlag, representing humanity and the Federated Ascendancy, stood side by side in the Harbinger's central chamber. a vast, cavernous space that shimmered with an ethereal, living light. "Are we truly prepared for this, Chancellor?" Vorlag's voice, for the first time, held a note of profound awe, almost reverence. Eris met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. "We have spent generations preparing Prime Arbiter, and we are not alone. We are together. Whatever the Harbinger holds, we will face it as one." Following the meticulously designed protocol, Eris and Vorlag placed their hands, one carbon-based, one crystalline, on a central console that pulsed with soft, inviting light. Around them, human and ascendancy scientists monitored the readouts, their collective breath held in anticipation. A surge of energy coursed through the chamber, not violent but profound. The light intensified, blooming into a gentle, golden glow that permeated every corner of the vast vessel. A low, resonant hum began, growing in intensity, filling the silence with a song of awakening. The very structure of the Harbinger seemed to sigh, to stretch, as if rousing from an impossibly long slumber. Then a voice, not a spoken language but a conceptual transmission, flowing directly into the minds of all present, translated by the Ascendancy's advanced neural interfaces and humanity's innate empathic processing. It was ancient, vast, and imbued with an unimaginable sadness. "We have waited, we have watched, we have yearned for connection." The voice echoed, not just in the chamber, but seemingly in the very fabric of their beings. It was not threatening, not even authoritative. It was simply, deeply, profoundly weary. "We are the architects, the harbingers of the celestial weave. This vessel is our final message, our final hope." Chancellor Eris and Prime Arbiter Vorlag exchanged a look of bewildered comprehension. The architects, a legendary, mythical race, whispered about in the oldest Ascendancy lore, said to have shaped the very galaxies, then vanished without a trace. The universe is not as it seems. Beyond the veil of known reality, beyond the boundaries of our charted existence, lies a threat, a cosmic blight, an entity of pure entropy that consumes all it touches. It began its expansion eons ago, slowly, inexorably. We fought, we sacrificed, we built, and we perished. This vessel, the Harbinger, is our legacy. It is a seed, a beacon, a map. A new holographic projection flared in the chamber, not of the vessel itself, but of a vast, star-strewn galaxy. Then, a dark, creeping tendril, a void of nothingness, began to spread from the edge of the galactic map, slowly but relentlessly consuming the light of stars, entire nebulae vanishing into its hungry maw. It is called the Void Hunger. It is ancient. It is relentless. It is inevitable. We could not stop it. We could only warn. We could only hope to seed the galaxy with knowledge, with a chance for survival. The voice paused, its ancient sorrow palpable. "This vessel contains the cumulative knowledge of the architects. Our science, our philosophy, our understanding of the Void Hunger. It contains the key to traversing the cosmic distances required to reach the true frontier, beyond the expansion of the Void Hunger. A place of refuge, a place to rebuild. But it requires cooperation. It requires unity. It requires a willingness to transcend individual species' interests for the sake of all life." The holographic map shifted, focusing on a single, distant point, far beyond the known boundaries of the Ascendancy, far beyond any charted stellar cluster. It was a shimmering, almost mythical region, bathed in a light unlike any they had ever seen. "That is the promised edge, the only place we found in our dying breaths that might offer sanctuary. But the journey is long, the path is perilous, and the Void Hunger approaches, even now unseen, unheard, at the very fringes of your perception." The voice faded, leaving behind only the gentle hum of the awakened vessel and the horrified silence of the humans and Ascendancy. The truth, revealed after a millennium of waiting, was more profound, more terrifying, and more unifying than any of them could have imagined. They had laughed at a relic warship, dismissing it as a curiosity. They had dismissed the humans as primitives. Now both stood before them as harbingers of a cosmic truth, a truth that demanded not just alliance, but a complete reevaluation of their place in the universe. Prime Arbiter Vorlag turned to Chancellor Eris, his crystalline eyes wide with the implications of the architect's message. "The Void Hunger, an existential threat of this magnitude, our entire history, our conflicts, our perceived galactic importance, it all seems so trivial now." Eris nodded, her face grave yet resolute. "We have always known there were larger forces at play, Prime Arbiter. Harbinger was a constant reminder. Now we know what those forces are, and we know what we must do." The alliance, forged in the shadow of a cosmic threat, was no longer merely a diplomatic convenience. It was an imperative for survival. The relic warship, once dismissed with derision, had become the galaxy's only hope, a beacon not of war, but of a desperate, unifying quest for life itself. The laughter had died, replaced by a profound, shared purpose and a chilling understanding of the true scale of the universe. The future of all life hinged on their ability to heed the silent, ancient warning and to navigate the path to the promised edge. The conclave chamber, once a place of subtle political maneuvering and cautious diplomacy, now pulsed with a singular, urgent purpose. The architect's message, transmitted from the Harbinger to every sentient being within the federated ascendancy and to humanity's burgeoning interstellar network, had shattered the illusion of galactic security. The holographic projection no longer displayed the relic warship in isolation, but rather a dynamic, terrifying map of the known galaxy, overlaid with the creeping tendrils of the void hunger's expansion. Its slow, inexorable advance, imperceptible over individual lifespans but devastating across cosmic timescales, was now quantifiable, its shadow falling across countless star systems. Prime Arbiter Vorlag addressed the High Council and the human representatives, Chancellor Aris and her chief advisors, who now sat as equals at the Void Iron table. His voice, usually a resonant hum of authority, now carried an edge of somber gravity. The scale of this threat, as revealed by the architects, demands an unprecedented level of cooperation. Our individual species' interests, our historical grievances, our technological disparities, all are now inconsequential in the face of the void hunger. We are, for the first time, truly united in purpose, survival. Chancellor Aris met his gaze, her expression reflecting a quiet strength. The architects left us a map, Prime Arbiter. The Harbinger is not just a vessel, it is a repository of their knowledge, a library of their struggle against this cosmic blight. It contains schematics for technologies that will allow us to counter the void hunger's advance, and more importantly, to traverse the vast distances to the promised edge, the sanctuary they discovered. The challenges were immense. The technologies stored within the Harbinger were far beyond the current understanding of both ascendancy and human science. They involved fundamental manipulations of space-time, energy, and matter that dwarfed their most advanced theories. Yet the urgency of the situation spurred them to unprecedented intellectual leaps. Scientists from both species, working collaboratively, began to decode the architect's legacy, translating complex conceptual matrices into applicable engineering principles. One of the first breakthroughs came from a joint human-Xyler team deciphering the architect's method for quantum shielding. This technology, far from a conventional energy barrier, created localized distortions in quantum entanglement, rendering matter temporarily intangible to the void hunger's entropic grasp. It was not a weapon, but a means of protection, a way to slow the relentless consumption. The architects understood that direct confrontation with the void hunger was futile, Siller, the Qatar scientist, explained to the council, his tone now imbued with a new sense of reverence for the ancient race. Its nature is not biological nor purely physical. It is a fundamental force, an absence of being. You cannot fight it. You can only evade it, protect against it, or flee from it. The implications were sobering. The galaxy was not to be saved through glorious battles, but through patient, arduous work, through technological innovation, and through an organized, species-wide exodus to a distant, unknown haven. The Harbinger, now fully operational, became the heart of their efforts. Its vast internal foundries, capable of manipulating exotic matter, began to replicate the architect's technologies, slowly at first, then with increasing efficiency as the joint scientific teams refined the integration protocols. Fleet after fleet of ascendancy vessels and humanity's nascent deep space craft arrived at the research station, not with weapons, but with raw materials and eager crews, ready to contribute to the monumental task of galactic preservation. The Ascendancy's vast infrastructure, once dedicated to internal defense and expansion, was retasked for the Exodus. Entire planetary populations began preparations for long-haul interstellar journeys, their biodomes being converted into self-sufficient arcologies, their FTL drives augmented with Harbinger-derived efficiency systems. Humanity, with its smaller yet adaptable population centers, began a similar parallel preparation, their internal divisions finally healing in the face of a universal threat. Prime Arbiter Vorlag and Chancellor Aris held joint addresses, broadcast to every species under their combined aegis. Their message was consistent. There was no room for complacency, no time for fear. Only action, unity, and unwavering resolve. The architects faced this same enemy, alone, Chancellor Aris declared in one such address, her voice amplified across stellar distances. They left us a warning, a legacy, and a chance. We will not squander it. We will honor their sacrifice by forging a new future together at the promised edge. The exodus began. Not a chaotic stampede, but a meticulously planned, multi-generational undertaking. Wave after wave of vessels, retrofitted with quantum shielding and Harbinger Tech FTL, began the long journey towards the coordinates provided by the architects. The Harbinger itself, acting as a lead scout and navigational beacon, began to chart the safest, most efficient routes through the cosmic chaos, its vast engines pulsing with the quiet power of a civilization's last hope. As the first great fleets departed, a new understanding permeated the relationship between humans and the ascendancy. The Xyler, who valued intellectual rigor and logical progression, found themselves respecting humanity's intuitive leaps and their surprising resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. The Glick, with their communal structures, admired humanity's capacity for individual initiative and adaptability. The K-Arthar, once wary of humanity's chaotic nature, now saw their fierce protectiveness and unwavering determination as a vital asset. Humanity, in turn, learned from the Ascendancy's ancient wisdom, their vast archives of cosmological data, and their deep understanding of interstellar politics. The former primitives were now students and teachers, collaborators and leaders, their inherent adaptability proving to be an invaluable asset in the uncharted territories they were now forced to navigate. Years passed, then decades. The journey to the promised edge was arduous, filled with unforeseen challenges, rogue gravitational anomalies, pockets of unshielded cosmic radiation, and the ever-present distant threat of the void hunger, its expansion charted daily by the Harbinger's advanced sensors. But with each challenge, the Alliance grew stronger, their bonds forged in the shared crucible of survival. Finally, after generations of interstellar travel, the lead fleets, guided by the Harbinger, arrived at the coordinates. What they found surpassed all expectations and simultaneously deepened the mystery of the architects. The promised edge was not a planet nor a star system. It was a colossal, self-contained Dyson sphere, impossibly vast, surrounding a binary star system. Its outer shell was constructed from the same metamaterial as the Harbinger, shimmering with an internal ethereal light. It was incomplete, as if abandoned mid-construction, yet undeniably functional. And surrounding it, meticulously arranged in an intricate orbital pattern, were hundreds of thousands of dormant vessels, identical in design to the Harbinger itself. These were not derelicts, these were copies, a vast fleet of Harbinger-class vessels waiting. The architect's final message, stored within the Harbinger's core, resonated once more, its ancient voice now tinged with a faint, almost imperceptible sense of hope. We could not stop the void hunger, but we could prepare. This is the Seed Fleet, our last act. Each vessel contains a fragment of our civilization, a repository of knowledge, a blueprint for survival. We scattered them across the nascent galaxies, hoping that a species or a collection of species worthy of understanding would find one, would decipher it, would carry on our legacy. A profound silence fell upon the combined human ascendancy exploration teams. They had not merely found a sanctuary. They had found an inheritance. An entire fleet dormant, waiting for them, each vessel a beacon of hope, a meticulously crafted arc of knowledge and potential. You, the humans, with your unique capacity for both chaos and profound empathy, with your blend of scientific rigor and intuitive wisdom, were the first to truly comprehend the Harbinger. You were the first to resist the urge to destroy, and instead chose to understand. And in doing so, you found partners in the ascendancy. You are the inheritors. You are the new Harbingers. The message ended. Prime Arbiter Vorlag, his crystalline eyes reflecting the shimmering light of the colossal Dyson sphere and the vast Seed Fleet, turned to Chancellor Aris. His voice was a low, resonant hum, filled with an emotion that transcended his species' usual stoicism. They did not just leave us a path to survival, Chancellor. They left us a purpose. They left us the means to become more than we ever dreamed possible. Aris looked out at the awe-inspiring spectacle, a tear track. A path down her cheek, a human expression of overwhelming emotion. We laughed at a relic warship, Prime Arbiter. We underestimated an ancient power, but it was not meant to mock us. It was meant to guide us. And now we understand. The real warship, the true weapon, was not its capacity for destruction, but its capacity for revelation. And the true power, it seems, was not its ancient technology, but the unity it inspired within us. The story of the ascendancy and humanity had just begun. The void hunger still spread, an eternal threat in the distant reaches of the galaxy. But here, at the promised edge, with a vast seed fleet at their command, and the accumulated knowledge of the architects flowing through their collective consciousness, a new chapter was unfolding. A chapter of interspecies cooperation, of galactic exploration, and of a shared future forged in the crucible of fear, hope, and the profound, humbling revelation of an ancient, cosmic truth. The galaxy would be defended not by a single species, but by a unified front, the inheritors of the architect's ultimate legacy, the boundless potential of life itself, united against the void. They had not merely survived. They had been elevated, transformed by the wisdom of a relic, and by the unexpected depth of a species they had once dismissed with laughter.